Welcome to another crochet tutorial with Cozy Rosie UK. Today I'm going to be showing you how you can make your very own blooming stripy ribbed scarf. I'm going to be using 3 colours in my scarf. You can use more, you could use 4 or 5, but I'm going to show you just using these 3. Before we get started, don't forget to hit that subscribe button so that you never miss another one of my crochet tutorials or one of my free crochet patterns ever again. Let's grab the materials that we need to get ourselves started. I'm going to be using a paint box yarn, which is from Love Crafts. I'll pop an affiliate link into the description box below so that you can get these colours as well. I'm using shade 302, which is a champagne white. I've also got a light grey, I can't remember the exact colour, but the shade number is 303. And I've got my absolute favourite, which is a blush pink, which is 353. All of these yarns are a chunky yarn, which is a bulky weight yarn in America, so a size 5 yarn. And I'm going to be using a 6mm crochet hook, and I've got a pair of scissors because we need to cut our yarns after each pair of rows. So grab all of your materials. You're not going to need a darning needle for this one. So get your hook, get your yarn, and let's get started. You'll also find in the description box a link to my blog post where you can find this pattern written down, all for free. And there's also a printable ad-free version of the crochet pattern that you can purchase either on Etsy or on Ravelry too. All of those links I'll pop below in the description box for you. So in this scarf, I'm going to be starting with the light grey shade, which was shade 303. And the first thing we're going to do is with our crochet hook, we're going to do a slip knot. So you just make a loop and bring your working yarn through that loop to create your slip knot. There is a full description, a full tutorial in the description box for you as well. So once you've got your slip knot onto your size 6mm crochet hook, we're going to start by doing an absurdly long chain. So it's going to be a chain of 202. So to just do a slip knot, you simply bring the yarn over your hook and then bring the yarn through the loop on your hook. And we're going to literally do that 202 times. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Don't worry, I'm not going to count all the way with you. What I would say is, hang on, 8. I can stop at an even number, at number 10. What I would say is if you've got a stitch marker, I would highly recommend maybe every 50 or even every 30 rows just to place a stitch marker, so you'd have to count all of your chains all of the way. So as I said, do a chain all the way so you've got a total of 202. That's going to give you a very long scarf. You can obviously do less if you want to do a smaller or a shorter scarf, but this will mean that you'll be able to double wrap your scarf once it's all worn. 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20. So a total of 202 chains, and I will meet you once it is all done and we can get cracking on with the rest of this scarf. So a total of 202 chains. Okay, so that is a total of 200, so 201, 202. So it is a very, very, very long chain. So if you want to check how long your scarf's going to be when it's finished, you can simply literally drape it around your shoulders. It is going to be a little bit of a stretchy chain because, well, I've done mine a little bit looser as well so I can work into it easily. Now, what we're going to do is we can't work into this first one. We're going to do a half treble crochet into each chain along. This is going to be row 1. So to do that, we're going to start by placing our first stitch into the 3rd chain from the hook. Okay, So remembering that this one doesn't count, this first chain here, we're not going to work into, that's chain number 2. So I always count down one side. So 1, 2, and we're going to put our hook into there with our first stitch. So to do a half treble crochet, we bring the yarn over the hook, and then we're going to insert it into the 3rd chain, and we're just going to go under one of the loops in that chain. If you want to, you can work in the bumps of the chain to give it a really nice finished edge. That's the bump there. But for me, I actually prefer it just working under that top loop. So we'll do that again from the beginning. So we're going to yarn over and into the 3rd chain from the hook. We insert the hook, yarn over, bring the hook back through with that yarn, and we should have 3 loops on our hook. We're going to yarn over and pull through all 3 loops on our hook. We're going to do that into the next chain. So you see we've got this big hole there, just ignore that. This is the next chain here. So again, we yarn over the hook, ignoring that hole, we're working into this chain here. Insert the hook, yarn over, bring that loop back through. So we have 3 loops on our hook. We're going to yarn over the hook again and just pull through all 3 loops on our hook. Ignore that hole there, yarn over the hook and into that next chain, just under that top loop there, yarn over, bring that hook back through with the yarn on it, 3 loops on our hook, yarn over and pull through all 3 loops. So if you wanted to count your stitches, ignoring this bump here, that's that chain we ignored. So we've got 1, 2, 3. You can see the posts, you can see the light coming through them there. If you want to make it really easy, you can just count the V's along the top. So we've got 1 V, 2 V's, 3 V's, and this loop on our hook never counts. So we're going to continue to place 1 half treble crochet in the UK, 1 half double crochet in the US into each of these chains all the way along. And we will end up with a stitch count at the end of 200, because we skipped those first 2 chains, which acts as our turning chain. We'll go into that when we get to the end of this row. And each time we're simply just going to work into each of these chains, placing 1 treble crochet or 1 half double crochet if you're using US terms, into each of these chains along. So at the end of row 1, we'll have a total of 200 stitches. So keep working all the way along, and I will meet you at the other end when we've got all 200 stitches. So just making sure that you're working into each of these chains along. And I'll see you at the end. So I'm just reaching the end of my first row. You can see I've reached all the way down to my top knot, not top knot, slip knot. And I'm just going to place my final stitch into that very last chain. Should be an absolute expert at half treble crochets now. If you want to do a count of your stitches to make sure that you've got the right amount, which I would recommend because we are going to ensure we have the same number of stitches in each row, you can, as I said before, you can just count your V's. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, etc. And you should have a total of 200 if you've used the same starting chain. So we started with a chain of 202 all the way back here, and we skipped those first 2 working to that 3rd chain. So that gives us a total of 200 chains. So I mentioned right at the beginning of this video, before we started this, something called the turning chain. So because we're doing a half treble crochet, the official turning chain is 2. So you would chain 2 and then turn your work, or you can turn your work and then chain 2. I tend to chain before I turn, and literally the same as we did to make our chain there, we just simply bring the hook with the yarn over and pull through. That's 1, and we're going to do a chain 2 for our turning chain. And I always turn my work like a page in a book. I'm just going to bring that over there because there's a lot of that. Make sure this is not twisted. So now that we've chained 2, we are going to go into round 2. So make sure you can see this nice and clearly. Again, we've got the loop on our hook, does not count as a stitch. Chain 1 is here. This is chain 2, where that second one is. And this is our first stitch. So I'm going to put my thumb over that, and that is stitch number 1. So from the side, you can see you've got this post here and that gap, and that's where you would normally put your hook. But what we're going to do is to create this rib effect is we're going to work into the back loop of our stitch only. And she grabs a darning needle just to show you. So if this is where we would normally put our hook, you can see that we have 2 loops to our stitch. You've got your front stitch, the front loop, which is the one closest to you, and this back loop here, which is the one furthest away. So we need to place our hook just to pick up this back loop. So just as I did with that darning needle, we are going to yarn over the hook, ignore the chain 1, chain 2. This is our first stitch here, and what we're going to do is we are simply going to push, aim for the middle of the stitch. So there's our first stitch. You can see the gap there. We're going to aim for the middle of the stitch. So rather than going in and under, we're going to aim for the middle here and simply push. And it will push it towards the back, and you will pick up just 1 loop of your stitch. We're going to yarn over and bring that hook back through again. So we've got those 3 loops on our hook. We're going to yarn over and pull through all 3 loops. And that leaves that front loop of our stitch unworked. So you can see the hole is slightly different than before. And we're going to do that the whole way down. So again, you can see your next stitch, you'd normally go through under both the loops. We're going to yarn over first and aim for the middle of that stitch, pushing towards the back, picking up just that back loop only, yarn over, bring up your loop, yarn over and pull through all 3 loops on your hook. And again, that front loop gets left unworked. So yarn over, go through the middle of the stitch, pushing towards the back just to pick that back loop up, yarn over, bring a loop up, yarn over and pull through all 3 loops. So this is, you may see this as an abbreviation saying BLO, which is back loop only. So as I said, there is a link in the description box for the written pattern for this crochet pattern, so you can have a look at what the abbreviations look like. So it will probably say working into BLO, back loop only, half treble crochet or HTR, BLO, back loop only, and it leaves the front loop unworked, giving us that lovely ribbed effect. So just as before, we're going to work into each stitch across. In this case, we're doing work into that back loop only, and we're going to do all 200 of them. We're staying in the same colour. At the end of this row, we are going to change colours, okay? So keep working into each back loop all the way across into each and every stitch, and you should end with the same number of stitches that you started with. So you should have a total of 200 stitches at the end of row 2. So I will meet you when we reach the other end of this incredibly long row, ready to change colours. So I'm just working into my last stitch here, which brings my total of number of stitches. I've still got 200 stitches here. Now at the other end, do you remember we did a chain 2 and then we turned? Before we do that, we're going to change colours. So I've got my tail end, I am ready. I've got mine ready to go on my second colour. So I've done my light grey and I'm going on to my blush pink for the next row. So to change colours, it's super, super easy, okay? Literally just drop your grey working yarn and place your new colour, leaving quite a long tail. I'm just going to grip it between those 2 fingers there and then just bring it through the loop on my hook. Drop the pink, pull the grey tightly so that it's nice and secure. I'm going to make sure I put my tail yarn out of the way and pick up my working yarn. I'm going to pinch it just between my thumb and my forefinger, holding all the yarns down so I can just tighten what's on my hook. Then I'm going to do that chain 2. I'm going to do that again for you. Pull that a bit bigger. So I started with my main colour, which is my light grey. I dropped that one, and then placing the tail yarn away from me, I put a new colour onto my hook, just pull down and grip it between my forefinger and my third finger and just bring it through the old colour, tighten the old colour down, drop that tail yarn and yarn over the hook with the new colour. I'm going to wiggle it a little bit so it's nice and tight. So tighten that loop over your hook, yarn over and pull through to chain 1. Do that again for your chain 2 to turn. Now normally I would encourage you to weave your ends in as you go, but we're actually going to use these later, okay? We're going to use these as part of the fringe. So we're just going to leave them there, and I'm just going to turn my work. So I always turn it like a page in a book. It's just the way I remember to do it. And we can leave those 2 tails just flapping about there. So going into row 3, we've changed colour if we are changing colours, and we're going to work into that back loop again all the way across in our new colour. Again, we're going to be leaving that front loop unworked to give us that nice ridge, and it's quite easy to recognise your back loops now. You've had, well, 200 stitches so far, all working into that back loop only, and this is us doing row 3. So we're going to end row 3 placing a half treble crochet into the back loop only, into each stitch across, and we're going to end row 3 with a total of 200 stitches once again. Nice easy number to remember. And you can see how that colour change is really showing, and it really makes this rib show out really well as well. So we're going to work the whole of row 3 and row 4 in exactly the same way and in the same colour. So I'm going to let you crack on. Do your 200 stitches for row 3. When you get to the end of row 3, we're going to chain 2 and turn, and then we're going to do the same thing again in row 4, all in this same shade. So we do the chain 2, we've turned our work, and then we're going to go on to do another 200 stitches all the way back down. So we end up with 2 rows of grey and 2 rows of pink. So we're going to change colour every 2 rows. So keep working your way across row 3 and do the same for row 4. So chain 2, turn, and then working into that back loop only, place another 200 half treble crochets into each stitch. And I'm going to meet you at the end of row 4, okay? So by that point you'll have 2 rows of your first colour and 2 rows of your second colour. So I'll see you in a little bit. I'm not going to say that's going to be a quick part of the job. So just hit pause and I'll be back with you at the end of row 4, where we're going to change colour again. Okay, so the last stitch of row 4 for me is popping that in into the last stitch. There we are. So you've still got 200 stitches, and you can really start to see the ribbing showing now, which looks really great, don't you think? You can see it on both sides, so it's almost reversible. It will be reversible, this scarf. So we've got row 1. Pop it down so you can see. So row 1, where that line is, row 2 is just behind it, row 3 and row 4. So at the end of row 4 we're going to change colours again. So just like we did before, I did snip that colour off, leaving a long tail. Before I snip this one, I'm going to attach my next colour. Ignore that all just came out of the ball, because that's always fun, isn't it? So once again, nice long tail, because we're going to use that for part of our fringing. Just going to place it over the hook, push it out of the way and bring it through the loop on my hook, pulling down on the old colour just to secure it. And then I'm going to put my tail out of the way, just there. With my working yarn, making sure it's attached to the ball, I'm just going to tighten that loop, making sure everything's nice and tight, and then do the chain 2 with the new colour. And then turn my work again. So this is us going into row 3. No, it's not. Thank goodness it's not. We're going into row 5 already, and once again it's exactly the same. We're just going to place a half treble or a half double crochet into the back loop using the new colour. So we are going to continue to do this. We're going to do it all again. So we're going to do 2 rows in our third colour. In my case, I'm using the champagne white for the third, because I do it in 2s. In row 5 and row 6 is going to be in the champagne colour. I mean, you can change colour every row if you wanted to. If you wanted to make another one, you could change colours in every single row, because we're going to use these tails at the end. So if you've got tails on both ends of your work, it's absolutely fine, because you're just going to hide them in the fringe. We're not going to weave them in or anything. So it's going to be quite a quick project in that respect. So continue to work on rows 5 and 6, and then we're going to go back to colour 1 again. So we're going to do this for what I'm going to do a total of 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, and then I'm going to finish off with another 2 rows of the last colour. So I've got 2 the same, and then I finish off just with that. So again, don't forget you can find that written copy of the pattern in the description box below. And if you need to re-find this video so you can finish up once you've done your next few rows, you can find it in your history on your YouTube app or on your YouTube account as well. I know you will have already hit the subscribe button. And you know what I'd really appreciate? So if you pop in the comments what colours you're using. I'd really love to know what colours you're using on your blooming stripy scarf as well. So pop that in the comment box for me so I know which colours you're making your scarf in, and you can share your progress over on social media too. If you want to tag me in that, you'll find me on Instagram and Facebook using the handle @CozyRosieUK. So keep working on row 5 in your third colour choice, and row 6 is also going to be in the same colour if you're following this pattern. And then when you get back at the end of row 6, down this way, change back to colour 1, do 2 rows in colour 1, change to colour 2, do 2 further rows in colour 2, and then do another 2 rows in your third colour choice. That's why I'm interested to see in the comments what colours you're doing. And then if you want to make it, I make my scarves a little bit wider than most people would, I suppose. I like them nice and wide, nice and long, nice and wide. And then I'm going to do a final row, a final pair of rows in my first colour as well, to kind of, so it edges it, it gives it a bit of a nicer edge. You can leave it in just your final rows as your third colour if you want to. And then we are going to add our fringing. So this is a bit of a trick that I like to do with my fringing, so that it means I'm not the best. I don't enjoy weaving ends in on my projects. I like to make sure, especially if I'm going to gift something, or in my case I do actually sell my items at craft fairs as well, I like to make sure that they are super secure. Nothing's going to come undone. It can be popped in the washing machine. This is machine washable acrylic yarn. It's super soft, and I think it's useful to know that if someone was to pop it in the washing machine, it's not going to come undone, because that's my worst fear, is that someone has a beautiful handmade garment that you've made, or a handmade accessory, and I couldn't imagine that they just popped it in the washing machine and they dragged it out and everything was a bit falling apart. So the way that I do my fringing will be super secure. It will secure all of your edges, and it means you don't need to weave your ends in. If you're anything like me, that's not the funnest part of a project. So I'm going to leave you now while you go ahead and complete your next, finish off these 2 rows in this colour. So this is going to be rows 5 and 6. Rows 7 and 8 are going to be in colour 1. And 9 and 10 will be in colour 2, 11 and 12 back in this colour again in colour 3, and then I've lost count of the rows now because I'm not very good at maths. Let's say 13 and 14, might be right, are going to be, for me, are going to be back in my first colour again. Don't forget, you can, once you're kind of into that row, you can snip your previous colour. Just make sure you leave a nice long tail because we are going to use that, as I said, as part of our fringing. And it stops things getting too tangled up, she says. There we go. So yeah, keep working through on these rows and I will see you back when you're happy with the width of your scarf, so that we can add in our fringe. So you can either hit pause and come back, or you can find, as I said, you can find this video in your history, and we're going to go through this fringing together with our completed scarves so that we can rock them out. So I will see you in a bit. So I finished my scarf. I've got all of my rows here. So this is actually the other side. So this was row 1 and 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13 and 14. So I've got 2 rows in each of the colours. And I was running a little bit low on the main colour, so the one with the 3 stripes. So just be careful that you've got enough to create your tassels. If you haven't, you can always mix your colours of your tassels in here as well, or your fringing in as well. So what you're going to need, I'm going to flip to the other side. That was the easy edge. This is the edge where we've done all these colour changes. And I've left these strands here because I'm going to weave these in to our fringing. So the first thing I want us to do is we're going to secure these ends. Very simply, we're just going to tie them gently, just a double knot, so that we can hide them in with our fringe as we add that. So this is going to stop our scarf ever unravelling. I mentioned before that even when I'm making for my actual crochet stall, I like to make sure that things will never come undone, because there is nothing worse than you gifting something and it being popped into the washing machine, because this yarn is washable. It's 100% acrylic, so it can go in the washing machine, and you'd hate to think that something you've gifted to someone will end up in the machine and then all of a sudden it is coming apart. So you notice that I'm tying together the same colours, and where that is knotting is kind of in the middle of our ribbing, and that's where we're going to be placing our fringing, in between each, in like the middle of the colour. So we're going to place a fringe in the middle of each of these. So just make sure they're all tied, and this one that's on its own, we're just going to secure that on itself. There we go. So they are all secured. Okay, so let's get prepared for our fringing. What we're going to need is a hard book, so it doesn't bend at all, and ideally one that's got a bit of a ridge in it so you can run your scissors through it. So what I did on this end was I placed 4 strands of each colour. So you'll see you've got 1, 2, you've only got 3 on that one. So 3 strands, or 3 or 4 strands on each of these. And we're going to need, so 4, 8, 12 in the main colour, and then 8 on each for each end of the scarf. So if you're good at maths, you can work that out, because we're going to do them the very, very quick way, so they're all the same length. I've already done my greys, they're already here ready and waiting. So I'm going to show you how to do the pink. Grab your hard book and just hold that with your thumb, and you're just going to run your yarn around your book. Obviously keeping count, which I haven't. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16. So that's 8 for each end. They're all going to be pretty much the same length, so it's going to save us trimming at the end. So you can see it's wrapped around, they're all the same length. And as you can see, you can just get your scissors under there. Just going to snip this long end off first. And then I'm just going to run my scissors on the inside and cut all of those pretty much at the same time. Putting our book to one side, there are all your strands for your fringing, and they're all pretty much the same length. So I'm going to put those to one side. I've got my cream ready as well. So let's start attaching this fringing. We're going to start with the main colour. So you are going to need your crochet hook still. So I've still got my size 6 crochet hook, and I'm simply going to place it just above that knot in the middle of this stitch here. So it's a little bit into the front, into the scarf, because we want it to be a good solid feature. Okay, I'm going to grab 3 strands, all of the same colour. You can mix and match them if you'd like to make it a bit more of an interesting fringe, and then try and get all the ends to be the same size and just fold it in half. Simple as that. With that through on your crochet hook, slide it onto your crochet hook, and I kind of secure it in my hand there, and with my fingers just bring the hook through to create a loop. So you see we've got a loop here. These are the ends, they're all still together. I'm going to bring my hand through the loop and push it through, and then I've brought those ends through that loop. Now I want to hide these ends inside as well, so I'm just going to also bring them through the same loop, and then just gently pull to tighten. And there we are, all our ends are secured. I'm going to pop that knot through as well. And there you have your first fringing. Obviously your ends are a little bit longer, but we're going to trim those up in a moment as well. And that's all nice and secured, and it will sit nicely as well once all the other strands are added. So let's add our cream or our champagne white strands. Grab some of those. So I've got 3 cream strands, pretty much all the same length at that end. Just literally fold them in half. Grab my crochet hook. I'm going to go in roughly there to the middle, going through the same way each time so that my knots are all on the same, facing the same way on my scarf as well. Just bring that hook through that hole and it creates that lovely loop. Take your hook out. I'm going to place my fingers through, grab those and just pass it through that loop. I'm not going to pull yet because I also want these strands to go through, so they're all nicely secured. There we go. So they're through the same loop. Pick up those strands and just gently pull. And there we are. They're all secured. All our knots are facing the same way. And it's turning into quite a nice fringe. So the next colour is pink. So just work out where you're popping your hook through. Get your 4 strands, three or 4 strands, however thick you want your fringing to be. It's entirely up to you. Check they're all pretty much the same length and fold in half. Just bring it back through with your hook, making sure you've caught all of those. If you don't catch all of them, just start again. Take my hook out of the way. Bring those strands through that loop. And I'm going to grab those ends wherever they've gone. There they are. And I'm going to bring those through the same loop. One's on one side, one's on the other. Just bring that through as well. Just gently pull to secure all those strands for our fringe. There we go. Doesn't take long. And we can just continue to work all the way down, adding our strands on, making sure that all the knots are on the same side. I'm not happy with that at all. Oh, there we go. That's a bit better. You can play around with them. You can loosen them if you can undo them if you need to. Just pull on the knot and you can undo it if you need to make it a bit neater or a bit tighter. Once they're all added, I'm going to show you the ultimate trick of getting the straightest strands and the neatest finish. So carry on and add all of your strands and I'll meet you back when they're all done. So one of the things that I really like to do when I've finished my fringing is I don't like it when it's a bit wavy like that. So I treated myself to a T-foul Access Steam, and it is literally a steamer, so like a steam iron. You can use a normal iron, but this I think is a little bit more easier to control. Plus it heats up in absolutely seconds. You simply press that, and when it stops flashing, it will release steam from here. Only takes 45 seconds to warm up. And providing you're using the right wool, please check the yarn that you're using allows you to put heat or steam near your yarn, and it makes it a lot straighter. So if I compare these two ends, you can see which ones have been steamed and which ones haven't. We are still flashing, just waiting for that to warm up. And all you have to do is literally just wave it in front of the steam until it gets a bit heated gently. Don't put it on the metal because it will melt any yarn. And obviously if you're using an actual wool, I wouldn't recommend this. You can just spray it damp and then kind of gently tease them to be straight as well. So I'm just going to click this little button under here, and it holds down and just releases continuous steam. I'm just going to kind of jingle jangle and straighten out here. Obviously take great care when you're near steam. It is of course boiling water at the end of the day, but you can see how much straighter they look already. And it's just to gently tease them straight. I don't go too close because it is rather warm. But it will give you the straightest fringe you've ever had on a scarf, I can assure you. So you can see the difference in that already. I'll just turn that back off. There we go. Move that out of the way because that's now incredibly warm. And you can see it's straightened all of those strands nicely, which means the next step of us actually trimming our ends to get a nice clean edge is going to be a lot easier. So I'm just going to change the camera angle and I'll be back with you. So this is where we get to play hairdresser. So I kind of make sure mine are lined up. They're not going to move. I'm just going to move that there. I hope you can still see what I'm doing. Just push it together, making sure that the edges of the scarf on both sides are lined up. And we're just going to kind of pick the first two up, just like a hairdresser does, as I compare it to, and run your fingers down until you reach the shortest strand. And we're going to lose that much length off of these. So the shortest strand is going to be the one we're going to have to match to. So do one side of the scarf at a time. Simply run your fingers down till you reach the shortest strand, and then we're just going to snip. I'm going to go off, sorry, I shouldn't go off camera, but, and just with sharp scissors, you're just going to cut along, just like a hairdresser would. Move those ends out of the way. So already you can see they are of similar length. And you can just go over it, making sure that you catch all the ends and they are all the same length. Oh, don't want those in there. Go away. There we go. And then just move on, pick up the next colour with the one that you've already cut. And moving down, just cut off those long ends. You have to pull tightly. Just wanted to take off those long ends. So they all end up the same length. And then pick up the next colour because you've already done those pink ones. Again, pull down. It does feel like we're cutting off quite a lot, but it means it will have a nice straight edge. There we go. See, they're all the same length. Pick up the next one. Remember, we've got these tail ends in here as well that we've joined on, which is why they're so much longer. I normally do this over the side of a desk and then just drop the ends straight into a bin. Just making sure that your scarf is straight. You can always put a weight on it, maybe place a book on it to stop it from moving. Just gently come down towards that shortest length and then just trim off the longer ends. bit overly cautious here about cutting off too much. So just keep checking that it matches that first side that you did, because obviously any movement will make them slightly longer. To the last one on this side of the scarf. Okay, snip those off. You tell I'm not a hairdresser, can't you? Let's be honest. You wouldn't want me cutting your hair, but that's why I'm not a hairdresser. So now I'm going to bring the other edge up and make sure they are lined up so that they are the same length. And I'm going to pair up the two sides, making sure they are the same length. It's probably a bit, I do like to be a bit overly cautious. I'd rather I took my time over this section rather than getting it wrong. Again, just trim off those long ends. You can always double check it and do it again. Check they are the same length. It does seem a little bit longer than that end, doesn't it? Okay. Again, you're just going to move all the way through, doing all the colours on the same, until they are all the same length. This is the last step to completing your blooming rippled ribbed scarf. So I hope that you have enjoyed this tutorial. I hope that you've learned lots of lovely techniques. Pop in the comment box once you're all completed. Don't forget to tag me on social media on your completed projects so that we can all celebrate your success of your completion. Watch me hack all of these off. It's going to be the funnest bit though, I'm sure. It's been an absolute pleasure to have you here with me today to complete your scarf. As I said, don't forget to hit that subscribe button so you never miss another one of my crochet tutorials again. And there are lots more coming, there always are. And I will hopefully catch up with you soon. You can find me over on Instagram as well, so we can kind of get chatting over there as well. So thank you once again for joining me. I hope you've enjoyed making your blooming rippled scarf. It's so squishy. And I'll see you again soon.